yeah.
In the meantime, I had a lot of discovering to do.
Oh, yeah.
My harmonica playing was scratchy, but I was entranced by the sounds of the great Chicago bluesmen, Sonny Boy Williamson,
Right
Junior Wells, Muddy Waters and Buddy Guy. We would sneak out of school and go to the aquarium in Brighton and catch the British versions, the Graham Bond Organisation, John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, and The Who. Eric Clapton was playing with the Blues Breakers and had forgotten his plectrum. Dozens of would-be guitarists eagerly offered a selection from their pockets. Eric grunted his gratitude. The Who smashed the place up. Ginger Baker from the organisation grabbed a girl from the crowd, and on returning from the beach 15 minutes later she said, "Oh, that was the filthiest thing I've ever done in all my life." What fun. But I wanted to see the real thing. A blues, that is. One day, a friend suggested we hire a taxi and go up to the Marquee Club in Soho. The driver waited for us down a lane out of sight of the school. The five of us paid him £1 each for the return trip. He dropped us in Wardour Street, and in we went. There was a young British R&B band playing. The singer writhed and twisted and screamed like a baby who'd had his dummy suddenly removed. The mic was so close to him that he almost swallowed it. He did the same playing the harmonica. It made me think I was not so bad. Early punk, perhaps? Toneless, rhythmless, and a bit depressing. It was the warm-up act, but it left me cold. Then Jimmy Witherspoon came on. He stood a yard from the microphone, stock still, smiled at the crowd, took a deep breath and sang, every day I have the blues, every day. The power in his voice, a full-throated baritone, blew everyone away. This was a real singer with all the subtleties of jazz, a real bluesman, a man who knew the world and how to stand up against it. After that, I saw all the British bands as boys who wanted to be men but didn't know how to do it. There were exceptions, of course. The Small Faces mixed East End grit with soul, and I saw them blow away the Animals at the Colchester Odeon. Then there was Zoot Money and his big roll band. I noticed that they were playing in a small hotel in Walton-on-the-Naze, a seaside town on the northeast edge of Essex. I got there and I found them playing in the lounge to about 30 people. Zoot could sing. He obviously wanted to be the British Ray Charles, but his voice did have resonance and character. He and his band could really play. Their solos were accomplished, the rhythm was strong, and they mixed blues, soul and jazz in the way that Ray did. They had a young guitarist called Andy Summers, who had clearly studied Wes Montgomery's jazz solos. Later, he became the guitarist in The Police. But the tiny crowd at Walton was not there to hear a polished jazz concert. They had to be entertained, and Zoot, something of a comic prankster, came up with the goods. Once the band had got into bare buttons, he left his organ and debagged the manager of the hotel, who tried to look like he was having fun. He didn't book him again. 30 years later, a friend, Paul, was staying with me and mentioned that he knew Zoot Money. Paul had designed many of the album covers for the British bands of that time, and he suggested that we should go and meet the great man at his place in West London. Zoot turned out to be the expansive, generous and funny person that I had imagined, and he kindly signed the back of my 30-year-old Big Roll Band LP. Just then, his 18-year-old daughter comes in and tells her father she's going out. "Where are you going?" says Zoot. "To Brixton." "To Brixton? Where in Brixton?" "Oh, I don't know, some club or other." "Who with?" "Some friends." Right, says the wild man of 60s R&B, looking a little rattled. "I want you back by 1. Is that clear?" "Don't be daft, Dad. The thing will hardly get going by then. See you later, right?" She gave him a kiss, and off she went. "Kids today," said Zoot. turning to us. I've always enjoyed dancing, but I've also been aware that to look as if you are enjoying it in England is considered a bit suspicious. When I was 12, my mother, hoping that I would be invited to the parties and dances of our rich friends, sent me to dance lessons to learn the basics of ballroom, the waltz, the foxtrot, the gay Gordons. That was fine, but one day the teacher, a well-endowed woman in her 40s, announced in her booming voice that we would be doing Latin. We started with the cha-cha, although she called it the tra-tra-tra. Seeing that I was picking it up, she called me over and said, "Right, now I will demonstrate. Michael, come." She pulled me firmly to her bosom. My feet left the floor, and I couldn't breathe at all. So she let me go and said, "You're not as good as I thought you were, Michael. Never mind." And she carried on with a solo demonstration. Decades later, I was on a Latin dance weekend and was trying to do the cha-cha with a young Italian woman. She kept stopping and complaining that I was doing it all wrong and eventually walked off in disgust. How could I be doing it wrong, I thought to myself. I had learnt it from that bosomy woman all those years ago. It must be right. However, on asking the teacher, who was Puerto Rican, it turned out I was putting the final cha on the fourth beat of the bar, whereas it should be on the one. So, she had not only asphyxiated me, she had taught me all wrong. In spite of this humiliation, I was enjoying dancing, particularly the Latin stuff. And when I came home, I told my stepfather that I really liked the dance classes. "I shouldn't like it too much, old boy," he said. "Or people may think, well, you're a hairdresser or something." I found this remark a bit confusing. I did get invited to some of those prestigious parties, as my mother was hoping. I was glad I had had some lessons, because dancing with girls was really nice, even to the ancient string trios that provided the music. I also noticed that while everyone clapped firmly on the beat, I was doing offbeats for fun. But I got strange looks, so I stopped. It seemed that the richer people were, the more the men were afraid of dancing with women. They would do everything in their power to avoid it. Getting drunk, hiding, talking earnestly, going for a walk, getting drunk, anything, rather than move in time. I once went to a party of some exceedingly wealthy people. They owned 10,000 acres of park and farmland in Hertfordshire. To begin with, everyone stood around like King Charles, with their hands behind their back, saying, and what do you do? Really? How interesting." By 11 o'clock, the drink was starting to take hold, and the laughter got louder and louder. At 11:30, a gramophone began to play Scottish reels, and then Rock Around the Clock. Arms were flying, elbows poking out, knees going up and down, sometimes sideways. Soon, as most of the men were over 6'3", it was getting dangerous. The women retreated, and the men started banging into one another. Quite suddenly, they launched themselves into the swimming pool. It was all over by 12, so we went home. I knew by now that I wasn't rich. I wasn't ever going to be, but I also began to wonder if I was really English. Could you actually be English and enjoy dancing? I later learned that plenty of working-class English men and women not only enjoy it, but are pretty good at it. It was around that time that I got invited, for the only time in my life, to a Deb ball. That is, a coming-out party for an 18-year-old girl from an extremely wealthy family. In oil, so I was told, so that she could find an equally wealthy husband. I was not one of those. However, I had a friend at my school whose sister the ball was in honour of. Our party met, to begin with, at the house of a rich Essex landowner. A sumptuous dinner was served. After the third course, the ladies withdrew to the withdrawing room, leaving the men to pass the port, cigars and brandy, and to tell dirty jokes. I didn't mind the first 3, but the jokes were awful. I was 16, and to hear grown men telling them was quite depressing. All that money and power, I thought, and you've got the wit and subtlety of 12-year-old boys. When we arrived at the ball, I saw 2 huge marquees and heard the music coming from one of them. There was a band playing a style of music I'd never heard before. It was jazzy and had elements of pop, but the rhythms were something else. I was listening to thegass, a band of 2 guys from Guyana, one from Trinidad, and a sax player from Nigeria. That something else was Caribbean. The rich don't generally know much about music, but they can hire agents who do. And this band, the hottest thing on the London club circuit, was playing to a bunch of rich people who couldn't even clap in time, let alone dance. In fact, the dance floor became the usual dangerous place, as drunken young men flailed their knees and elbows in random directions before running off to jump in the pool. But I was grateful they went, because I could enjoy thegass in peace, followed by the Alan Bownset, another classy R&B band from London. In between sets, I found myself talking to an unaffected Scottish girl who let it slip that Mary, the debutante, for whom this extravaganza was in aid, was pregnant.